Don Richard just gave the cops the tea they need to put Usher and Diddy away for a long time, and all the receipts she brought are wild. Don Richard just dropped bombs on Usher, exposing his role in some of Diddy's shadiest and most disturbing activities. And trust me, it's ugly. We all know Usher and Diddy go way back, with Diddy practically raising Usher in the industry for years. We felt sorry for Usher, thinking he might have been one of Diddy's victims. But hold up, Don is saying Usher's hands aren't as clean as we thought. Allegedly, he was right there with Diddy while things were going down with Cassie. And let's just say he wasn't stepping in to help. Dawn did not come to play, y'all. And she spilled some juicy tea that will leave you shook. The thought of Usher being involved in Diddy shenanigans is kind of shocking, because we've all thought for a long time that Usher was an upright guy. He said the right things, gave us great songs and all stuff. If anything, we thought that he was a victim, because there have been rumors for a long time that he was allegedly one of Diddy's first victims. If you're wondering why folks have seen Usher as one of Diddy's victims, it's because there's been a lot of speculation about some shady stuff going down when Usher lived with him back in the 80s and 90s. It was pretty normal for young up-and-coming artists to live with more established ones who knew how the industry worked. Usher was discovered and signed by Larry as a kid, and when he hit 13, Reed sent him to live with Diddy. And knowing what we know now about Diddy, I think y'all can imagine the kind of mess that might have gone down between them. People close to Diddy have painted him as the type who doesn't really take no for an answer, so Usher was definitely in some risky territory. Oh, and get this, Diddy's place at the time was called Puffy Flavor Camp. Like, seriously, what kind of name is that? Red flags all over. Anyway, fans have long speculated that Usher might have been traumatized by whatever went down at Diddy's house, and that's why he rarely talks about it. In one interview, he was asked to open up about Diddy and his time living with him, but the interviewer noticed that Usher got real uncomfortable when the conversation shifted to his experience living under Diddy's roof. The interviewer noted that Usher became surprisingly restrained. I want to save some stuff for my book one day, he said. I'll put it this way, there was a lot of Southeast X. Don't even get me started on what he said in this interview with Howard Stern.
Like, just filled with chicks and orgying, like nonstop, right?
No, not really. I mean, but hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you seeing?
I went there to see the lifestyle.
Right.
And I saw it. And it was but I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. It was pretty wild.
So nobody...
What I did say is that there were very curious things taking place.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't necessarily understand.
Diddy also slipped up and hinted that some shady things happened between him and Usher, like when he claimed that he and Usher used to sleep in the same bed.
Right here from day one, we used to wake up. And back in the days when he was like 10 and I was a little bit older, his older brother, we used to fight over the frosted flake.
Or the time he said this, nobody else take that turn, boy, I see you veg you in the kitchen eating all my cereal. I could go on and on about the shady situations surrounding Diddy and Usher, cause chilla, that's an entire rabbit hole. And it's a hot mess, but y'all get the gist, and that's why it's kind of surprising that Don Richard's lawsuit is painting Usher as something of a bad guy. A few days ago, Dawn hit Diddy with a lawsuit of her own, basically backing up Cassie's claims, while adding even more stories about what Diddy really liked behind the scenes and how he allegedly treated the ladies of Danity Kane. What's interesting is that this isn't the first time we've heard about Diddy's mistreatment of Danity Kane. His former bodyguard Gene Deal already spilled some tea a while back, claiming he overheard Diddy allegedly making plans to pimp out the group members, so Dawn's lawsuit is just adding more fuel to the fire.
Giving you this, Aubrey. He stood up there and he said in front of a lot of people, we were in the studio, and I said something to him and walked out the studio. He said, yo, I'm gonna big south and pick them up and pimp them out to my niggas. He said, I'm gonna them out. I'm gonna get them all in, and I'm gonna pimp their ass out to my niggas. I was like, give somebody kids. And walked out.
With so many people coming forward with similar stories about Diddy, you have to wonder if things are way worse than what's being led on. Dawn's lawsuit makes her the 7th woman and the 8th person overall to take legal action against him for inappropriate behavior, which is just wild. I mean, some of these cases go way back to the early 90s. Dawn revealed that Diddy mistreated the Danity Kane girls and went as far as to force them to rehearse up to 48 hours at a stretch without stopping to eat or rest. In the lawsuit, she said throughout the productions of making the band 3 and 4, Mr. Combs deprived Miss Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates of basic needs, such as adequate food and sleep. When Miss Richard or her Danity Kane bandmates requested meals or rest, Mr. Combs refused and chastised them with derogatory comments like, you bees don't want this, or y'all are not hungry enough. and I'm paying you bees to work it continued upon information and belief. Mr. Combs would regularly be awake for prolonged periods of time. Because he was high on drugs during these periods, Mr. Combs demanded continuous access to Ann Richard and her Danity Kane bandmates, often forcing them to record and rehearse for stretches of 36 to 48 hours without breaks. She also claimed that he would use demeaning words on her in front of his bodyguards between approximately 2009 and 2011. Throughout Dirty Money's recording process rehearsals, 8 performances, Mr. Combs repeatedly ordered Miss Richard to strip down to her underwear. He frequently referred to her as a bee and made demeaning remarks about her body, alternatingly calling her lazy, fat, ugly, and skinny, particularly in front of his friends, producers, and bodyguards, like other people who accused Diddy of inappropriate behavior with young girls. Don also made some shocking claims about how Diddy allegedly had young girls partying with him in his studio. And just like what Lil Rod said in his lawsuit, Don also claimed that the young girls allegedly used some illegal substances while partying with Diddy. Often while they were recording in the studio, Mr. Combs would hold parties where he would invite young men and women who were often scantily dressed and appeared underage to use and engage in sex. And Richard observed Mr. Combs and his colleagues kissing, groping, and inappropriately touching the women. Upon information and belief, the participants often left the immediate area to have intercourse and returned shortly thereafter. And if you wonder why Dawn didn't try to grow a spine and stand up for herself, well, she tried to stand up to Diddy once, but it did not end well for her because Diddy retaliated harshly, having one of his goons lock her in a car in the middle of winter without having the basic decency to turn on the heat. She wrote, and Richard screamed as loudly as she could, but no one responded. It was late evening in the wintertime. The windows were heavily tinted, and the interior of the car was dark except for faint interior lights, and Richard's belongings and winter coat were in the studio while the ignition was off, and there was no heat. With Mr. Combs' prior threats and running through her mind, Miss Richard felt sheer panic, terror, and feelings of claustrophobia at being locked in a small, dark, enclosed space with no way to communicate or call for help. She began to feel cold and feared for her life, not knowing when or if she would be released. Surely the Danity Kane girls were really going through it. And if you're wondering where Usher fits into this drama, Dawn's got some tea. She claims she saw Diddy put his hands on Cassie right in front of Usher. And get this, Usher didn't lift a finger or even act like he saw anything. Can you believe that the court documents said Combs hosted a dinner at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, which Miss Richard and Miss Harper were required to attend? Among the guests at the dinner were celebrities like New and Usher, as well as Mr. Levine. At the dinner, Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura had an argument in front of the dinner guests. Mr. Combs hissed at Miss Ventura in a screaming whisper and forcefully punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in visible pain, crying. M. Clark escorted Miss Ventura out of the restaurant, and Mr. Combs remained and continued socializing with the dinner guests. This just spills more tea on Cassie's claim that tons of people in the industry knew Diddy was putting his hands on her and didn't do a thing to help. But the fact that Usher of all people saw what was going down and chose to just chill while Diddy went off on Cassie is straight up scandalous. I mean, Usher's out here with this good guy image claiming to respect women, but he watched Cassie get brutalized in public and did absolutely nothing. Child, is Usher just as shady as Diddy? If he could ignore something this blatant, what else has he been turning a blind eye to behind the scenes? The plot thickens. The streets are now saying that Usher could possibly be named in Diddy's court case. In case you missed it, federal prosecutors are trying to get Diddy indicted in front of a grand jury. So it looks like Usher might get swept up in this thing because he goes deeper than we realize. Fans are shook by this, and they commented, "I like how the internet is ignoring the fact that Usher was named dropped in the Diddy lawsuit. Him and Neo sat right there and ate their food while Diddy beat the ish out of Cassie. Crazy." So allegedly Diddy punched Cassie in her stomach at a dinner in front of Neo, Usher, and Jimmy Iovine, and they just kept eating. And the only one that disappoints me out of this is Usher. IDK. Why? But I expected him of all people to say something to this emperor. Maybe he's scared of Diddy too. IDK. Poor Cassie, man. Y'all drop your thoughts about this in the comments, then check out this next video. And thanks for watching our video.